questions, and we're good.
All right. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have Rohit Adlakha online, and I'll please be aware that you will be muted for this session. So any questions as they come up during the talk, please feel free to submit it to me during the chat, and I'll put those questions to Rohit. Okay, so Rohit, the stage is yours.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure how many people are on the call. Rahul, do you have an idea?
We have 7, including myself.
Okay. And you also have a rough idea of, which concentration areas these people are in?
Or not really, but I'll keep that in mind for the next one.
Okay. And what about geographical mix? So mostly from India,
I think
or
mostly from India. Mostly
okay.
from India, plus a couple of friends from CMC.
Okay. Right. So hi everyone, and the reason I was asking these questions was this will help me, share relevant information as we talk along here. And of course, feel free to ask any questions, and that is the purpose of this conversation. That I should be able to clarify and share my experiences while I was in Simon, what I've done after Simon, and how life has progressed, and how I've utilized my Simon learnings in the real world. So to give you a brief background about myself, so I was in Simon in from 2010 to 2012, so graduated in 2012, and I worked. After that, I started working with Deloitte Consulting, focused on the technology and telecom sector, but my work was strategy consulting, and also part of mostly strategy consulting, part of which also included mergers and acquisition, integration work, pricing consulting work. We did a couple of product launches, a new product design and strategy work at that time as well during my stay at Deloitte. And after spending about a couple of years in Deloitte, and I was doing a whole lot of traveling at that time, so I wanted to cut down on the travel, which I think you could hear pretty much from all the consultants. So either they love it or they don't love it, and then people sort of decide one way or the other. So I decided not to travel that much, and I opted for another consulting firm where I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to not travel and do the same kind of work, do same kind of consulting work. So I joined Cognizant Business Consulting, which I believe is a recruiter at Simon, or at least it used to be, and I'm hoping as we are talking here that they are continuing to visit Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And at Cognizant, my work was pretty similar to what I used to do at Deloitte, even though Cognizant, as the name, they are branded more of a technology company, but they have a small consulting practice, and they want to sort of differentiate the consulting practice with the traditional technology work that they do. So again, within Cognizant, I was focused on telecom clients. So my clients were the AT&Ts and the Verizons of the world, so Time Warner Cable and Comcast, all these telecom and communications and media players. And my work primarily at that time during Cognizant was around business operations and business strategy. So mostly optimizing the operations of my client. So I'm not in a position to share the name of the client, but it was my work during Cognizant was primarily focused on business operations optimization. So that was the focus. And after doing that for a few years, I decided to move back to India. And very recently, about 4 months back, I moved back to India with my family, and I've started now working with the Gartner, and within Gartner, my focus area. So I'm leading a product for Gartner. So I have sort of took my consulting experience and I've put it to practice uh, in the real world or in the industry per se. And now taking the next step, not just the consulting piece of it, but taking the product to a real world, making the product grow and living the life of the product. So that is my role has transitioned to not just the strategic designing of the product, but living through the life cycle of the product. So my current role is to grow a product which Gartner has launched recently. By recently, I mean about 8 or 9 months back. And we are in a state where we are growing that product and we want to increase the user base and we want to increase the outreach of that product and eventually build the monetization model on top of it. So that all of that falls under my purview. And I'm leading a team now of, so currently my team size is 10 resources, and as we are growing, we are adding more members and more automation and more tools in my kitty to to be able to manage this scope. So I think I've spoken a lot about what I've done after Simon, and there is a brief history before Simon as well, which is about 6 years I was in the product consulting side. But that's kind of sort of been a few years. So we can talk about it if there are specific questions, but this is how my journey has been post Simon.
So first question to you that I have is, I know that you have a telecom background through and through. So was that a conscious decision on your part during your MBA to leverage that and look for opportunities within telecom? And what was your thought process coming into your MBA?
So coming into MBA, so before MBA also I was on the business side of the house or semi-business. I was a techno-functional guy. So I had the technical skill set, but I was pretty much part of the business organization. So my pay stuff was being generated by the business organization, if I can put it like that. So my idea of coming to Simon was build up on that business skill set, build up on the fundamentals of finance, build up on the economics of how a business is run. So I had some exposure in the real world, in the corporate world, but then building on those skills, I wanted to come back to school and learn those trades. Telecom per se was, I would say it helped me. So I had about 6 years of experience before MBA. And if you have a certain amount of experience before MBA, I think it's a plus and it's a negative as well at the same time. So the plus is that to your advantage, you can leverage that experience to get into a certain industry. However, that also makes it difficult at the same time if you want to change your industry. So for example, if I were to say that I want to switch to banking, that would have been really difficult. Right? Because I would not have any experience in banking, and now I want to be an investment banker or a financial advisor. I think what would have worked, so then your choices become limited. But if I were to still go in banking and I want to transition my career towards banking, then what would have helped is if I wanted to become an analyst, I would probably become an analyst in the technology and telecom sector. So even within banking, they have analysts focused on industries, right? Even within trade, they have analysts focused on the sectors, right? So there, my sector expertise would have helped, right? So anytime if you have a certain experience, I think I learned through CMC while I was in Simon, and also learned through my practical experiences. You have to convert your existing skill set into sellable skills, or they're called as transferable skills. I think that's the term CMC uses. So any skill that you have to convert to a transferable skill for the employer. So for me, if you talk about telecom, so my transferable skill, if I were to go to banking, would be the sector knowledge. Would be able to understand what it means if 5G or 4G is being launched, if LTE is being launched. So I can understand it, right? I would say better than a layman, right? So that was my strength, or that was something which was transferable. But if I say I want to do banking and I want to do it in the retail sector, I think then it would be, my chances would be very bleak because I would not have a whole lot of transferable skills there.
Okay, that makes sense. So, when looking for these opportunities while you were here, I know you did your summer internship with T-Mobile, correct me if I'm wrong,
Right.
and which seems like a natural connect with your background. And then you work for Deloitte and Cognizant and now Gartner. Could you share like a briefly on how did you find working with these organizations? How different or similar was it? And as an international student, as an international candidate, did you have any troubles working in the US market? Or how did you adjust to it?
Sure. So I think there are quite a few questions that you asked in there. So let me start with the sort of the easy ones or the shorter answers. So definitely as an international in any country or in any new culture, one has to adjust and understand the culture of that country, of that city as well. So if I were to share an example, if you move from Rochester to the West Coast, which is Seattle or San Francisco or San Jose, that whole California belt, I think you will see a cultural difference. And I don't know if the mix that we are talking to right now are all first year or second years, but if you are first years and then you are planning to get into an internship, so that might be your first exposure to the corporate world in US. So I think it would be, it's good to be cognizant of the fact of the different cultures of the city or of the work environment there. So West Coast is, pretty casual. Yeah, when I was in T-Mobile, I visited Microsoft campus in Redmond in Seattle. People come to office in shorts, right, and in round neck T-shirts. Versus if you go to a office in New York and in a technology firm in New York, people will come there in suits and ties. So the cultural difference is there even within the different cities. So, and of course the cultural difference is there between different countries as well. So coming from India, working in US, there is a difference in the work environment. So it is for us, all of us, to sort of quickly understand that, and we are getting an exposure of that in the Simon environment, right? But if from Simon, if you go to the West Coast, be prepared for again a different culture on the West Coast. If you go to Dallas or the Midwest region, there would be a cultural difference. If you go to Chicago or New York, there would be some cultural difference. So it's good to sort of acknowledge and understand those cultural changes and sort of see what is going around around you and sort of adapt to it quickly. So on my first day in T-Mobile, I wore a suit and a tie. And I think on the first day itself, they had a small presentation from the CEO, and this guy came in a jacket, like a bomber jacket, not like a suit jacket. So that moment itself, I realized, I took out my tie and I kept it in my bag. And the next day, I was not wearing a suit. So it's good to be sort of acknowledging what is going around you and sort of adapting and mixing with the team.
Sure.
Another thing I would share is if you are getting in an internship, anyone who is the first year and is going to get into an internship in a few months from here, treat that internship as a full-time job. In fact, I would say treat it more than a full-time job. Give it your 200%. Treat it like, even if it is not your dream company, but secure that opportunity, secure that full-time offer from that internship. Do everything you can. On the first day itself or within the first week itself, have a conversation with your manager and make your intentions clear that you are serious about this company. You want a full-time offer by the time you complete your internship.
So a quick question on that is, and my presumption is when you are in that internship, you'll probably be working alongside other domestic students, and the evaluation criteria used for you would be harder as compared to those. What's your take on that, and what did you do to mitigate that factor?
Okay. Okay. So I think one thing which is good to understand is anyone who would offer an internship to you, any company, right? They would not offer an internship just for fun. They are serious about it. They are serious about you as a candidate. They are serious about you as a full-time, long-term employee. They are not, they're not just trying to do time pass, right? So they are in the internship, and I understand it a little bit better because now I am hiring interns in my team. I recently hired 2 MBA interns. So we are looking at candidates as future employees. So internship is an opportunity for them to sort of see how you work, how you fit in. So anytime they offer an internship to you, I think the difference between US person, US origin person versus an international sort of is leveled. I would say the only difference there, which is not under your control as a candidate, is if there is a change in the company policy. If they stop sponsoring H-1Bs in the future. That is the only thing that you don't control. However, when they are hiring an international for an internship, they are fully committed and they have, I think, I would say, support and guidance from HR that how eventually they can hire this person for a full-time position.
Okay.
And of course, I would underscore it with the fact that, of course, everyone negotiates. So, you have to sort of position yourself as a strong candidate, as a strong individual. So that negotiation is in your favor from day one. If you're showing commitment, people like you, then, that negotiation power you have. So I think the only difference if you were to say, would there be a difference in any type of compensation between the US employee versus or US origin candidate versus an international candidate? I don't think so. It would be even two US origin candidates, one being stronger, other one not so strong in the personality, in your negotiation skills. So the other, one would lose versus the other. So it's not international versus US, it is between two individuals.
That makes sense.
Everything else. Yeah.
So just so that you mentioned the H-1B sponsorship, which is a big factor when anyone is looking for a job.
Right.
And the fact that the probabilities are dwindling, there's a shift in the political scenario now.
Right.
From your experience, if I were to ask, the fact that we get 1 year to work here, and if then for whatever reason somebody decides to go back to home, I know in your case you chose voluntarily to go home, but if that happens, so how should one think about that while talking to recruiters? Is it a conversation to be saved for later, or is it something that could be discussed at the start?
If you want to come back to India or go back to any other country of your origin after a span of 10 months or about a year, basically after completing your OPT, right? OPT. So if I were to recommend, I would not have that conversation with the recruiter earlier, and it might not be the most ethical advice right now. However, if a recruiter is hiring you, they are not hiring you for 10 months.
Sure.
Right? So they are looking for long-term employment. So if you were to share with them that you only want this for 10 months or for a year, then I don't think you're going to get that.
Even if you're talking about staying within the same organization but in a different location? So say if I were to talk to Gartner in New York, saying, hey, I'm going to work for a year, if the visa, like whatever, that sort of conversation.
Right. Right. So I think if there is a program like that, then of course. So I know from my experience, and it's 6-7 years old now, Xerox in Rochester used to have a program like that in their supply chain department.
Okay.
So they would hire you in Rochester, New York, and you would train or work for them for about a year till your operational practical training is valid. And once that is completed, you would move back to your country of origin.
Mhm.
So I think they had a program for India, at least. I know that.
Interesting. Okay.
So, right, and there was another company, and I forget the name, but I know the name of one of my seniors who got there, Vivek. Uh, yeah, his name, I forget his full name again. So Vivek,
Mhm.
and my batchmate, I have her face in front of my eyes, but I don't recall her name again. I'll look it
Sure.
up.
Sure.
But both of them went in the same company, and this company also now had the same program. So 10 months or about a year you work in the US, then you would be moved to a country where you have the work permit.
Okay.
And her name is Deepa Bonnell.
Okay.
So Deepa worked with, I forget the name of the company, so look it up on LinkedIn.
Sure.
You'll be able to find it. But Deepa started in US and she worked there for, I think, for a year or so. And then after that, she moved to India, I believe. And then eventually, I think she's in UK currently. She changed her job and again, she's in UK. But she started with this company and this 10-month program in US. I think when I was there, Ford came with an opportunity. So 12 months you work in the US and after that they will move you to Chennai in India.
Okay.
Ford has operations in Chennai, India.
Interesting.
So if the company has that program basically, then of course, then it is good to be, candid and good to share that intention upfront. In fact, they will only hire you if you are willing to go back after a year. Right?
Okay.
But if the company is looking for a full-time employee in US, I don't think it's a good idea to share that you are only there for a year.
And I'm assuming you find these programs publicized on their job portals, if they have something?
I think these 1-year programs most of it were which came to Simon. So all Deepa went in through, so it was through CMC.
Okay.
Again, Xerox was through CMC.
Okay.
And Ford also was through CMC.
Right. Okay.
All three names that I recall. So I don't think these names are or these kind of programs are publicly announced. Per se.
Right. Okay. So, quick question which I asked you earlier as well was, so you worked for almost 4 years here in the US market, and then now working for Gartner in India. A big skepticism, except the difference in pay scale, is about the quality of work. We understand that the South Asian markets are more support markets, whereas the business work is done more in the US and European and the UK markets. So from your experience, what's your take on that situation?
So I think what we need to do is basically clarify what business means here.
Sure.
Right. So when we say business, if you are talking about where the client sits, so in a client and services model, yes. So in a client services model, of course, if your client is in US, then that's where decisions will be made.
Right.
And offshoring or offsite out of India or onshore offshore model from any other country would not have that kind of business impact. So that's one. Other is if it is not a client services model. So for example, if you are in Ford and you are focused on Ford US market, then of course it makes sense to be US. But if you are in Ford and you're focused on Ford India or Ford Brazil and you are based out of Brazil, then there's no difference. Then you are part of the business and you are the decision maker in the market. So Ford India employee would make decisions for Ford India versus a Ford US employee.
True.
Right. In specifically in Gartner is not a client services model. Gartner is a products company primarily. So again, it's not that back end work is done in India. Pretty much everything is similar in US and India. The only difference I would say within Gartner is that Gartner never thought about India as a opportunity until like 2 years back or 3 years back. So one of the few examples of companies who started recently in India. So till 2013, Gartner did not have any operations in India.
Oh wow. Okay.
Or only like sales operations, which was also very limited. So they started, I think, in October 2013 or November 2013 in India. Okay. So it's a pretty fresh organization in that respect. We have close to only 200 employees in India, and we are expanding massively. Like the target for end of 2017 is about 500.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yep, that answers. So going back to your time at Simon, if you could share a little bit about your approach to job search, networking, planning your academic courses, a little bit insights on that, because coming from India myself, the way we look for and find jobs in India is very different than the US. So if you can share a little bit about that part.
Okay. So I think there's a two-part question. So the kind of courses I selected. So my strategy in selecting what I wanted to do in Simon was primarily complement my skill set. Okay. So I took a lot of courses in finance, which was not my strength area before Simon. So I wanted to enhance my skill set in that area. So I took finance courses. I also took a lot of, I think not a whole lot, but I took 2 pricing courses. So pricing went along with, so it was more supplementary. It was, I used to do pricing before Simon. And then I wanted to learn it more sort of formally in the classroom sort of. So that's what I did. And then other topics which I picked were mostly economics, right? So mostly macroeconomics and strategy from, I think it was Professor Jim Brickley, and there was another strategy course in the second year. So that was my, my sort of approach to courses and classes selection. I picked a couple of marketing courses also, which were focused on data-driven marketing. So if I were to recommend, I would say, even if your concentration is not marketing, to pick up a course which is around data analysis. So either it is one of the courses, I think, from Professor Vera Tilson, which teaches advanced analytical skills, and complement it with I think it's, I don't recall the course number, but there is a analytics driven marketing course.
Yeah, I'm taking
so
that right now.
And it's offered. Yeah, it's offered in the second year. So I think how the industry is shaping is all roles touch upon some amount of analytics. Right, so pretty much, I think you will hear analytics and buzzwords around analytics everywhere. You will hear and see data visualization tools a whole lot. So you will hear a Tableau. In the industrial world, you will hear these names very frequently: a Tableau, a ClickSense, or a ClickView. So these are all data visualization and how the data is processed, and then how you draw meaningful information out of this. So if you have that education in school, I think that strengthens your decision making.
True.
So that was my approach towards selecting courses. So now in terms of, I think, how do you go about job search? So there are quite a few, I think there are a few things which one should do. One is leverage CMC as much as you can. And start by leveraging CMC for creating a robust resume. And the difference is, again, coming from different international backgrounds, the resume format in your respective countries is very different versus how it is in the US. And I'm sure you guys would have already done that. Sure. So there's not sort of beating a dead horse, but it's a very important point. So start with a good resume. Then I would say make multiple versions of your resume, which I am again sure that CMC would have recommended you. So resume for a job, it's right? So, or resume for specific industries. So if you are looking for opportunities, and I'm sure you guys are not looking for opportunities just in like consulting. You
Sure.
keep your options, two, three options open at
Right.
least. So make specific resumes. So if you're looking for a job in the product space, or in product management, or in the, in the I'd say the newer world companies like the Googles and the Oracles and the Ciscos of the world, then you have to have a resume which suits their needs. Or Amazon. So Amazon is a big recruiter as well. Even if I'm not sure if they come to campus, but they recruit otherwise a whole lot. Right? So their resume and their expectation from a candidate is different. Versus a consulting resume is slightly different. Versus a pricing resume is again different. And versus, I think a finance resume, of course, is different. Right? So you should have those, I would say, the base variant of that resume ready. And depending on the job you're applying for, customize it even further. What I have seen and what recently, I think at my time at Simon, we used to have even what do you call those letters along ready. However, I think that trend has sort of diminished. At least that's what I'm seeing in the practical world now.
You mean the cover letters?
The cover letters.
Okay.
So maybe in schools that is still prevalent. So I would sort of go by CMC's recommendation, but in the corporate world, I think cover letters trend is sort of going down. It's more, customized resumes, and that's what is
interesting.
More, yeah. I think that's what I have also, that was my reaction as well. But I have not seen a whole lot of cover letters now in the last couple of years.
Yeah, because what I know and like what you told us, like if you see a section for cover letter, you definitely like submit it. I mean, I see it as a big part of the application, even the ones that I apply personally.
Right. So if okay, so I think it's good to clarify. If the company is asking for a cover letter, then definitely provide it.
Okay.
But
if not, then
in general, if not, I think that trend is sort of diminishing. It may not have diminished all the way, but it's sort of on a.
Do you see that decline in any specific industries, companies, or do you see it across? What's your take?
So in consulting in last couple of years while I was in US, I didn't see a whole lot of cover letters in Cognizant.
Okay.
And I have also not seen cover letters in Gartner. But then, it might also be specific to Gartner India.
Okay. Could be that.
Yeah. But when I applied at Gartner, so my manager is out of US and I didn't provide a cover letter.
Yeah. Share us a little bit about your Gartner process. I know you were still here with Cognizant. So how was that transition from Cognizant to Gartner in terms of your application process and then going back?
So Gartner was looking for someone who could lead the India team. And the entire team currently was still in US. So my manager is based out of US.
Okay.
Right. So I think that helped in also sort of that worked in my favor. And I was also looking for opportunities which would understand the fact that a US sort of person who has lived and worked in US now wants to go back. Versus if you go to a sort of a typical Indian company who has operations only in India, they would not understand an international candidate very well.
Right.
So I think you and I touched upon it when we met. So if I tell you I am from, and do we have any international or any US origin person on the call or anybody?
So we have an interesting mix. We have one person who's of Indian origin, has a US work permit, and is probably considering going back to India. So we have like all those sorts of mixes. We have people with Indian origin looking to work in the US, probably considering going back. So.
Right. So no, my reason for asking that question was if I tell someone who is not of Indian origin, and if I tell them that I am from, IIT Madras,
right,
would that would that resonate with them? Would they be able to relate to what it means? Or if I tell them I am from, if I tell them I'm from Indian Institute of Management, probably they would know. But if I tell them that I'm from Narsi Monji School, which is a very good business school based out of India, it has a big brand value in India. Whereas in US, they would, probably there would be hardly anyone who would know it. So I think that same thing applies. So if you go back to Indian setup and you share with them you're from University of Rochester, if there is some relationship and they have had, like if you now come to Gartner and I am there, so I understand what University of Rochester means and what Simon is and what the brand value is. And I would probably also understand some of the other, US business schools. But if you go to a typical company who does not have operations in the US, who don't have any sort of relationship with US, then the value of the brand sort of diminishes. So we do have to keep that in mind. And then it becomes a case-based situation. So if they are looking for someone with US experience, then it works in your favor. But if they're looking for an MBA with, let's say, 3 years of work ex, then everybody who applies is almost equivalent. Right? So then the edge, that extra X factor that you could have brought, then you have to sort of position yourself to highlight that X factor. Right? Otherwise, any other business school from India and any other business school from India or Singapore or China or US, then they're more or less equivalent. Interesting. Right? And also, most of the time, it is, it's the profile that they are looking for. It's not so much which business school. It is like we want an individual with 3 years of work ex and business acumen and business knowledge.
Okay.
It's pretty much high level and not more detailed than that.
A concept that I've been recently talked about is like for me, and it's similar probably in your case, coming in with a 3 to 5 years work experience into Simon, finishing your MBA, and then one comment that I recently got was to probably not look at the MBA program hiring, but looking at more the experienced hiring. That's probably more just in time if talking about full-time opportunities. What's your take on that for people who have experience and going through those hiring routes?
Yeah, so I think I would say leverage anything that comes.
Okay.
So, go full, all cylinders on, go full throttle for job search, especially if you're in the second year. If you're in the first year, go full throttle for internship and then try to convert it. So if you have already crossed that stage and you're in second year, go full throttle for job search. So leverage any channel, every other possible way, go for it. Don't think twice whether this is the right way or not the right way. So yes, that what you're sharing it makes sense and it is worth it. But you also have to keep in mind, if you are going the experience route, then probably they are weighing more on your experience and not on your MBA.
Yes.
So then you may end up doing something similar to what you have already done. And if that is fine with you, if you are, fine being in the same industry, like I was in telecom and I continued being in telecom or technology sector, but then there was a progression in the role, right? So if you are fine with that, or if sometime you may also end up being offered something very similar to what you were already doing. So would you be okay with that? Because that's what you're saying, right? So I have 5 years of experience in, let's say, pricing, and now I'm applying based on my experience, then those are the kind of opportunities that will come across.
Right, I see your point.
Right? And if you go for opportunities which are more looking for more MBA kind of profiles, then of course the weightage on your experience goes down a little bit and they're looking for MBAs. Then I think anyone with a 3-year experience or a 5-year experience become pretty much equivalent. because now they're not weighing the experience as heavily, they're weighing MBA education more heavily.
Right.
But that, having said that, it does not mean someone with 1 year of experience would be equivalent to a 5-year experience.
Sure.
So 1 year is still very low and 5 year is good number of years of experience. But then a difference between a 3 and a 5 is not that much.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Another question that I have here is, so when you were in school and during your internship search and job search, what was your, if I have to ask, what was your mantra for networking? If you had to sum up your experience and your process to it, your take on it, how would you share?
Sure. So I think I do have good suggestions there, or at least I believe I have good suggestions there. So as an international, I think first thing we have to get comfortable with is, being comfortable with the approach of networking. Some of us, and I know from my experience and also from the experience of my batchmates, some of us were not very comfortable networking. To some it does not come naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So practice with your classmates, practice with CMC. If I am, not wrong, CMC used to run programs like that, and I would believe that they have continued running, networking events. So practice in those sessions. Being comfortable to be, you go for a networking event and most likely you would have a beer or a glass of wine in your hand. Probably you're also eating, and then you're also trying to talk at the same time. You're trying to, talk to an alum or trying to talk to a corporate, individual. So that's, if you are not comfortable doing that, you practice and then you learn, right? If you're comfortable, then of course, but continue practicing. So that's my first piece of advice. The second thing for networking is, I think there are different channels of networking. So one is these networking events. Try and attend as many as you can. So there's always a trade-off, right? You attend one event versus you do some job search on your laptop, or some secondary research, secondary job search. So there's a trade-off. But, weigh in your options. But so the point I'm trying to make here is, when you are doing search on your laptop, so there are different tools that you leverage, and LinkedIn is the primary tool, or I think the tool which has sort of stood up compared to rest of the others.
Sure.
If not already, I would recommend everyone to go ahead and buy a LinkedIn Professional. It is approximately $30 or $35 per month.
The premium version. Yep.
Right. And so, LinkedIn Premium, right?
Yep.
Not Professional. So don't think about that this $30 is not worth it. Sometimes that thought, I've heard it from my batchmates.
Sure.
Right? Let me put an economics model on top of it. These $30 will make your $100,000 investment worth it. So it is not $30. You're investing this $30 to make your $100,000 that you have invested in Simon Education worth it. If you get a job.
Right.
So, the return on this $30 is huge. So don't shy away from spending that money. And I think LinkedIn gives, a couple of months of free as well. So try it out.
Yeah.
So what you gain from this LinkedIn Professional is you're able to send emails. That was one tool which I leveraged heavily. If I were looking for opportunities at Google or eBay, there's no Simon Alum there. I think in eBay there is one Simon Alum. And I don't think he is there anymore in eBay. He has left, and I think he also moved back to India.
Oh, okay.
Right, so his name is Gaurav. Gaurav Gupta. He used to work in eBay, and now he has moved back to India. So, if you, at least in my time, there were no Simon Alums there. So how would you reach out to someone in that company? You don't have any sort of entry point.
Right.
So to get that entry point, to be able to reach out to the recruiters there, to be able to reach out to other hiring managers, you have to have that tool, which is LinkedIn Professional or Premium, wherein you can send emails. If you have another way of reaching out, then of course LinkedIn Premium is not necessary. There should be a way for you to reach out.
Sure.
And I think LinkedIn enables that. Another thing is, don't just blindly connect on LinkedIn. Whenever you send in a LinkedIn request to anyone, add a small message in your request why you are reaching out. I know there is a cap, the number of words. Try a concise and a straightforward short message. Hey, I am a Simon MBA. I'm looking for guidance on how to get a full-time opportunity. Would love to know about your experiences. Would love to know about your company or something like that. And that's number 3. Number 4 is time your LinkedIn requests. By that I mean is if you're specifically in consulting, right? If you're trying to reach out to an alum or otherwise, if you reach out to them on Monday morning, I think it's not the best time because Monday morning they're traveling. If they get the request, they might look at it, but they might not act on it on Monday itself. And they will think that I'll act on it on Friday. And by Friday, they've already forgotten about it. Right? So at least that's what I think, and it makes sense to reach out to consulting alums on Thursdays and Fridays. So that, the chances of replying to your emails, to your reach out requests would be higher. And I think in general it applies because usually Mondays are busy in any profession. So if you reach out on a Monday, it can be tricky. For me, it worked out whenever I reached out on a Thursday. That's number 4.
That was a lucky day.
Number 5, so number 5, always follow up. If you send one request and you assume that the alum or another employee is obligated to reply, that assumption is 100%, 100% inaccurate. Okay. People are busy. They get 10 to 20 requests each week. And they have, let's say, 1 or 2 slots to talk to. Right? So out of those 20, how do they filter out?
Right.
They don't know anyone of the 20. So they, people have different criteria, and I've seen different way of responding, and I'm sort of talking collectively what I've seen within my batch, what I've seen my colleagues in the corporate world do. So people look for that sort of shows your persistence, your perseverance, your inclination, your interest in the job, your interest in knowing that employer, your interest in knowing that alum, right? So follow up. And a good rule of thumb is follow up within a week. Within a week to 10 days to follow up. So first email you send on a Friday. By next Friday, if you don't hear, it's good to drop a follow up. Hey, I understand you are busy and you might have missed my email. I'm wondering if we can connect.
So if I am, say for example, you have 10, 15 people reaching out to you, some probably from the same background, some probably just because they're interested in Gartner, or some because just interested in India. So considering the crunch on your time, which you don't have much time to spend, do you usually go by first come first serve, or do you usually look for that connect in the background or something to respond to in that volume?
Sure. So my my way of sort of filtering would be if someone is clear in what they're looking for. If someone just tells me they want to connect, I think that goes sort of last in the list.
Right.
if someone has a clear message, and it can be, as simple as, hey Rohit, I want to understand about Gartner, or I want to learn about Gartner India, right? And maybe I will not set up a time to talk, but I will do reply to that email, and I'll say, do you have anything specific you want to understand? Can I, sort of answer you over email? Or if this, then I would sort of test the curiosity of that individual, what they are looking for, or I would, like if someone reaches out to me on LinkedIn and if they are from Simon and they don't have any message in their LinkedIn Connect, so I usually not accept it, but I reply back to them. So I would ask them, hey, how can I help you?
Sure.
Right? And I would sort of not accept the invite, but since it is Simon, I would reply. If it was not Simon and it was someone else, I would not reply or not accept. Right? If the message is not clear. Like last week I got a message, hey Rohit, I want to learn. It's not from a Simon alum, it's from someone from the industry, but I want to understand a bit about Gartner recruiting process in India. Can we connect? And that's fair enough, right? So there is a reason for why this individual is reaching out.
Okay. I get your purpose.
So that's my analysis. And I think I also want to highlight along the other 5 points that I say, and point number 6, which is not the last, but it's one of the most important points. Don't send connect requests or networking requests or anything in the night.
True.
So, we as students, sometimes we tend to, after class, we go back and we send out networking emails even during night. That doesn't go very well because most of the corporate employees have emails configured on their phones and it will buzz at like 11 p.m. It's not a good experience.
True.
So what I used to do is draft everything, draft it up and sleep over it. And then next morning, whenever you get up, first thing, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., send all your emails. Just hit enter. Or hit click on send and there it goes. What it does is 2 things. One is you're not sort of bothering the person at night. And second, next morning when the individual is fresh, your email gets attention. It also sort of showcases your your dedication, that first thing in the morning is you're reaching out. Not on a Monday morning.
Sure, of course. Makes sense.
Right, but yeah, of course, a Monday morning is better than a Sunday night 11 p.m. message.
True. Okay.
Right.
Sounds good. Yeah, we're kind of running out of time here. Any parting thoughts, anything that you would like to share from your end to our audience?
I would say, are there any other questions that I can quickly answer?
Not really. Not specific questions. I would definitely share your email with the attendees of this session, and they can reach out to you if they have any other questions. But
Sure. So yeah, feel free to share my LinkedIn. Feel free to share my email address with them, and feel free to reach out to me anytime if you have questions. Even though I'm now in India, but I do have some experience of how things work in US and how to go about job search in US.
Right.
So if you have specific questions about T-Mobile, about Deloitte, about Cognizant, I'll be happy to answer. All 3 of them, at least, back in the day, used to sponsor all international candidates, and that's how I was there. And their policies might have, got tweaked a little bit, but I still think large portion they still sponsor internationals.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Rohit. I would like to thank you again for staying up late for this. And
no worries. Thank you for setting this up.
Sure.
It's great connecting back with Simon. And in fact, next week, Dean Ainsley and I believe Jim, I forget his full name.
Jim Newton. Yeah, I shared your details with